Hi, my name's Alan Gray. I'm the festival director for the Sākihiwē Festival. We're broadcasting today out of Treaty 1 territory, which is the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji, Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, along with the homeland of the Métis Nation. So I'm not going to be the moderator today. I'm just doing some introductions. I'm going to ask our moderator today is why. Obviously not broadcasting from Treaty 1 here in Winnipeg, but I'm going to hand it off to Y now.
Thanks, Alan. Yes, we are at the bottom of the South Pacific. It's a little bit cold down here. How are we doing out there, whānau? Got our heaters on? Yes, it's Hey, real excited to be here. So as by way of our tradition here, we just in how we bring ourselves into these kind of spaces. I just want to start by giving my pepeha. So ko maunga pohatu te maunga, ko ohine mataroa te awa, ko tūhoi te iwi, ko mā hure te hapu, ko te rewa te marae, no ruatoki ahau, ko Wairere Iti toku ingoa. So that's me. I'm Wairere Iti. I'm here to introduce you and moderate with my friends who are working here in Aotearoa within the music industry. Amazing Māori who are beacons of light. Hey, how do you like that? Beacons of light, do you like that? And just really great people. I'm really excited to be here just to talk to them about what it takes to release music, particularly Indigenous music in Aotearoa. And but let's do those intros. So starting with you, Ninakaye, let's start with you.
Oh, kia ora whānau. Tuatahi he mihi nui ki a koe, Alan. Thank you for this opportunity and inviting us, our whānau, all the way over here in the South Pacific to be a part of this kaupapa. And Jade, of course, mihi to you also. Thanks, Y, for moderating. And awesome to see Rob and Cilla. Nā mihi nui ki a kōrua. Ko wai ahau, ko tainui te waka, ko o whawhi tōku maunga. Ko rere waitomo ki waipa te awa ko Ngāti Mani o poto te iwi, ko Ngāti Wikaharua Pūha te hapu, and my name is Ninakaye Taane-Tinorau. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Okay, shooting over to the coasties. Are you guys on the coast at the moment? Is that where you are? You're in Te Kaha, aren't you?
Yep, that's right. Hui anō. Ko i hoa te atua ora na mana nei ngā taumutinga kore, koro reki tonu ingoa tapu āmini. Ko Rob Ruha taku ingoa, no konei, no te whānau apuni, o te raia, no te teirawhiti whānui, no Ngāti Pro, no Ngāri ki kai pūtahi, rongo whakaata, ahu atu ki roto i a koe te tuahine, ki roto tainui waka, no te arawa, tūwharetoa, all over the show, but e mihi ana kia kote katoa, kia koe anō hoki e te tuakana, tō tātou kai whakarite I tēnei rā, e mihi ana kia koe, and to this fantastic festival also to be, reaching out and giving us an opportunity to have this wānanga here with ourselves, sharing our knowledge with each other, and then also, with further ripples and benefits going out to our Indigenous communities all around the world.
Kia ora. Kia ora tātou katoa. My name is Cilla Ruha, and we're broadcasting from the tribal territory of Te Whānau Apanui, my husband and his family's tribal homelands. For me, my tribal affiliations, ko Hiukurangi te maunga, Waiapu te awa, ko Ngāti Ue Pohatu te iwi, o te whānau umuari ki te hapu, no te papatipu o te ngaere tēnei uri, nā reira tēnei te mihi kauatu ki a koutou katoa e whakarongo mai nā. Thank you very much, tuku mihi ki ngā kai whakarite o tēnei kaupapa, thanking the, sorry, just switching my mind to English, it's a hard language to get around. Greetings to the organisers of this festival for having us on here and giving us the opportunity to be able to share what the mātauranga that we have and the experience that we have within the Māori music industry and within the wider Aotearoa music industry. Nā reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Amazing, amazing. Kia ora, everyone. Thank you very much. So just want to give our viewers out there a bit of context also, just what's happening with us here in New Zealand and Aotearoa, particularly around the COVID situation, just to give you some context, perhaps that may so have some impact on the discussion that we have today as well. But right now we have various levels in our country, and Auckland, where I am, Tamaki Makaurau, that is currently in level 3, which means we have to practice social distancing. Businesses are sort of closed for the contactless sort of delivery. It means everyone in the Auckland area can't go to have more than 10 people at any one place at any one time, whereas the rest of the country is in level 2, and that allows them to have larger congregations, I think up to 50. Schools are still open, businesses are still open, but it's a slightly different level, but masks are required, that kind of thing. So we've got our response to COVID-19 has at its most extreme has been level 4, where we've all had to stay home, and so that happened to us a few months ago, but now we're in this varying state across the country. So Ninakaye, who's in Kirikiriroa over in Hamilton, and she's in level 2. And I mean, Rob and Cilla, you might be in level 2, but just hanging out at the beach, it probably feels like a level 4, maybe.
It's normally always like level 4 here, so isolated. But it's cool. So like the added layer is all the iwi protections. Also, like our tribal territories have their own kind of like protections. And here in Te Whanau Apanui marae, we've closed our maraes. We've closed a lot of activities that our old people, that our elders would normally come out to support. Just as that added level of protection. And I think a lot of tribal territories, all of the different nations all around the Aotearoa are putting into place their own kind of protections on top of what our government is dishing out as well. So e mihi ana kia koutou.
Yeah, sure. Well, hey, the one thing about where Rob and Cilla live, just also is that they are plentiful in seafood and kaimoana and all of those kind of things. Yeah, no, we know, bro. We know, but maybe what they're lacking in is a little bit of internet speed. So we apologize if they do drop out from time to time. That they are, if it was coming in on a crayfish, they'd probably be high bandwidth. But unfortunately, it's very old copper. So hey, so let's get on with what we're here to talk about. So the topic is music release strategies in Aotearoa for Indigenous artists. I thought maybe a really good place for us to start would be to, I guess, get some experience about as yourself as Indigenous artists, what the market looks like for you here, and the challenges that you face as tangata whenua, as Indigenous First Nations people of this country, and the challenges that you face, and then that will help us to start to build the discussion around some of the challenges that other Indigenous cultures might have coming in. Maybe let's see how this all goes. So I'd like to start with you, Rob and Cilla, just because you're probably at this stage, the sort of where you guys sit in the landscape, particularly in I don't even think it's arguable. You're at the forefront of Indigenous music creation and sort of finding that balance between the traditional and the contemporary and bringing those two things together. How have you found it? So in terms of bringing your music to, let's start with the wider community.
I think it's the discussion around COVID was actually a real good lead into this corridor, because all that is no longer. So release strategies in the now will be very different for our people moving forward. Our world has changed forever, where we can, we would enjoy releasing music out into the world in a previous, lifetime. My last few albums, we'd release the album and then we'd go and tour the album that can no longer happen, especially in international territories. That just can't happen. And the added, I would say, value of being Indigenous means that we also have not just commercial considerations when we're wanting to tour, but considerations around looking after communities and making sure that those places are safe and those places are, are considered when we're dealing with an international pandemic. So the landscape now has changed and has changed forever. So the other great question here is how, as Indigenous people, do we then reframe how our practices, but our practices beforehand, when we would release into the world, was really based around our vision for our works. Who did we want to speak to? Why did we want to speak to those communities? Why did we want to get a news slot with that particular news provider? What did they provide to our people? And that went across the board throughout Māori television, which is our Indigenous kind of news broadcaster, television broadcaster for those of our whānau and international waters. To mainstream, Pākehā, Tauiwi, Haole, broadcasters as well. What did they provide to our people? What kind of messaging did we want to align with that we thought had kaha for the kaupapa that were in our waiata? So for us, our kind of, there's, before even thinking of kind of like commercial gains, I guess, is around the more Indigenous holistic way of releasing music into the world, because that's a tradition of ours that we've had mai rano from the time of our ancestors, from the time of our gods, releasing sounds into the world that are for healing, sounds in the world into the world that are for thought-provoking, that are for to charge discussion, and the music that we've released with all of our artists that we have close to us in our close proximity are those kind of artists. And so it's so number one is figuring out what's the messaging that's in our body of work that we want to put out to the world, and where are the natural synergies with peoples, with PR, with media, with radio, with television, with online platforms that have natural synergies with the energy, with the spirituality, with the kind of korero that we want to put out there in the world. Yeah, your turn.
Yeah, what he
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Let me just to kind of follow up with what you're saying, Rob. So I guess it's important to make a distinction here about the kaupapa, or about the drivers. You're talking about the why and the and what it does to provide value to your whānau, to Māori in general, and to build them and empower them. And so
I think even more so than providing value, it is the foundation for every decision that comes thereafter. So when you're talking about release strategies, that doesn't happen in a silo. So all of those things, the value systems, the belief set, the why, the purpose, or the kaupapa, that informs everything that you do, then basically becomes the driver and the key cornerstone decision making tool for us as Indigenous artists, and goes on to inform things like release strategies and why we appear at a certain festival and not another festival, why Rob said we will choose specific broadcasting platforms. And I think that that's really important to have a deep dive in, and not to skim over, because for the fact that if you skim over it, then I feel, and what I've witnessed and experienced happens and impacts Indigenous artists, is then they have these very external and superficial metrics by which then they start to measure their success or measure their value or worth inside of their artistry. And an artistry, as Rob so aptly put it, is an artistry that has been handed down as legacy and as a tool for well-being or oranga from our ancestors. So I think that that's very, very important for Indigenous artists specifically, to have those deep dives into their purpose, why they feel this gift has been drawn into their hands, and what as artists that they can do to better the world for the next generations with that gift. And I think with that type of holistic thinking, as we do think and be as Indigenous people, it provides a real pillar of strength. And then you can create very significant tentpole moments that may include things like festivals, that may include things like radio play, but it all serves a higher and a greater purpose, which I feel in the landscape of Māori music is something that have served our greatest Māori artists very, very well. And it's a common theme and a common standpoint that I acknowledge and that I've witnessed throughout those models.
Well, it's our superpower. Our indigeneity is our superpower. So it's a no-brainer that we would pour all of our might into bringing that to the forefront, so that it's the guiding light. One of our ancestors, one of our elders who just lives down the road, Rikirangi Gage, he calls those things our ancient algorithms, of oranga, of life-giving purpose. So these, and it's not a new thing. Identity is not a new thing, and putting that to the forefront, as we displayed this morning, by we introduced ourselves to the world by introducing our identity first. It's no different for us anyway in our few years of being a part of releasing music and release strategies. It's no different to that. So we put our identity first, we put our mana, our mauri, our tapu first, because those are our ancient algorithms to tell us, this is going to work.
Yeah, and it's dynamic, and it's dynamic. Because we're talking about identity, we're talking about culture. Those things don't have to, as we all know, don't have to be just kind of strictly deep and meaningful and ancestral and sacred and traditional. No, we're dynamic people as Indigenous people.
Yeah, man.
So there's humor, there's fun, there's lightness, but there's also those steps. So it's that bandwidth that we enjoy as Indigenous people, from our ancient algorithms all the way to the Spotify algorithms and everything in between.
Well, it just goes to show, doesn't it? I mean, there's an interesting argument here, particularly around, I've participated in particularly things around what Indigenous cultures could do towards building AI, and creating algorithms, as you say. And in this case, you're talking about a value-based, a kaupapa-based release strategy, which is based around values, not value. So I'd like to make that distinction, because there is a clear tension. There's a tension between the value-based ideology and the commercial-based ideology, which is where these things start to you have to meet. And there's a lot of Indigenous artists out there that are going, well, how come they get to be on the radio? How come they, and there's all this kind of stuff, but they're looking at it through a lens of, I guess a sort of a more commercial-based idea versus what you guys are talking about, which is this from the ground up, through the through kaupapa, through values-based, and all of these things that have been predetermined by our ancestors and are there. And these are algorithms that we can use. Ninakaye, I want to come to you because you have been, I guess it's your artist and your brother, Classic, that you're being, we've got Rob and Cilla over here, the artist being managed by his beloved, and and it's common in Indigenous cultures, and particularly in Māori, where it is whānau members, family members that are the ones that are managing them. Your artist is your brother, Tiki Taane, quite a prolific artist here in New Zealand, and has made that step of crossing over into the more traditionally commercial, or I'm going to come up with a better term for that soon, but I'll let you talk. And it won't be as good as the superpower that Rob has of creating English words like indigeneity. Ninakaye, tell me about, particularly with you guys, because I know you're whānau based, and I know that you have a very strong kaupapa when it comes to the decisions that you make, and how you think about your culture before you make your decisions. But how have you found that tension between those that process and finding yourself in the commercial mainstream market?
Good question, Wai. I just want to mihi to Rob and Cilla, first of all. I just am so inspired by your fellas' kōrero, like massively, and learning, absolutely. Thank you. And you guys, to me, are the example, and you are the future, and I'm really excited about that for our people. I think we're like the past in terms of how we represent. So, yeah, Tiki, I think just to give a little bit of background, when Tiki first entered the music industry, I mean, we didn't grow up connected to our our tribe. We grew away from our tribal lands down in Ngaipahu territory, and we're a result of our father being sent away from home at a very young age. So we are pretty much, I don't know what the word is, but we were assimilated. The intention was that we were assimilated, and we were to a point because Dad married a woman of English Scottish descent, and so that's our mother's whakapapa, our mother's heritage. So we grew up away from our people, very much so, in a very nuclear family kind of environment, and all we knew was home was somewhere far away with lots and lots of cousins and aunties and uncles and elders that we'd never met, that we longed to meet, but it wasn't a reality for us in terms of what was physically in front of us. So when Tiki first entered the music industry, it was heavy metal. It was all underground. It was all rolling with all the punks and the freaks of Christchurch City. And then he became the front man of a band that was all non-Indigenous people, and he was he became the front man, not because he wanted to, because he was kind of pushed into that position. He was actually the audio engineer, and that's his true passion, is engineering, is production, and whether it's live or whether it's in the studio. So, he kind of, as Rob said, our what's the word?
Indigeneity.
Flash. Yeah. That's our superpower. So, I mean, you can't help, you look at Tiki, he's Māori. There's no doubt about it. So, that was his superpower. And so it ended up being, bro, actually, we've heard you on the guitar after gigs. We've heard you in the accommodation jamming away. You're not just a sound man, obviously. You've got a bit of talent there, as Māori do, as Indigenous people do. We'd love you to actually sing. We'd like to release one of your songs and for you to sing it. So it kind of started like that. And he would only get up for one song at the very, very end. And then, of course, the audience would start demanding him, hey, we turned up to this gig to see that Māori guy sing, and he's not even on the stage until the very end, because he was the sound man. So it kind of happened, the way I see it, it's not by accident, of course, but it wasn't actually the original intention was for him to end up on the stage. Now, he stayed in that environment and that band for, a good 10 years or so. And when he left, he was pretty broken. He was a broken, lost Māori man, like many of us are in the city who have disconnected from our people. And so, but by that stage, he was already well inside of the commercial scene, the mainstream scene. So, you know, I think that's sort of the domain that we've been moving in ever since, you know, because I started managing him once he left the band and became a solo artist. And the reason for him wanting to break out was that actually the indigeneity in him was going, I need to express. You know, I don't have the language, don't know much about the culture, quite disconnected, but I feel that mana, that tapu, that ihi, that wehi, and all that, you know, inside of me, and it needs to come out. And so he came out with Tangaroa. He chose to come out with Tangaroa, which is Aotearoa Māori. It's our father singing, and it's a very non-commercial track. But for him, it was kind of like, well, I'm over this whole mainstream world. It's not, you know, there's something else in me. So, but I mean, by default, we're still in the mainstream world because he'd made left an imprint through in his time as frontman for Salmonella Dub that we're just in there. You know what I mean? We no matter how hard we try to escape, sometimes it's like, to be honest with you. And so now for us, it's actually about how do we become more involved in our Indigenous scene, I suppose, for Tiki, but keeping in mind that actually it is a strength for us to be in the mainstream and to hold our position there as a beacon of light, as you said. Why, you know, as someone who's been in that particular industry for so long, and that we know a lot of other Indigenous artists here or people look to and recognise Tiki as Indigenous. So, you know, we recognise, we acknowledge the responsibility of being in the position that we're in. And so it's not to say that it's not a negative thing at all. It's a positive for us to be within that industry in that position. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges for sure, and I'm sure we'll talk through some of those a bit more. AY.
Yeah, cool. No, absolutely. No, yeah, we got there. I think. No, you're awesome. You're awesome. Now, don't worry. It's going to be a lot of that. This is just like I say, it's just a conversation where we talk about what we've seen and what we've experienced, and maybe how we can help. I guess what I'm interested in, just now that you've kind of really explained your positions or and where you've come from and that type of thing, is that, and I'm glad you've helped make come up with a better term. I'm not going to say commercial music; it's going to be mainstream. That's what we're going to use when we're talking about the I guess the non-Indigenous side of things, because you can be in mainstream and not commercial. So and there are a lot of artists that will attest to that, and so. But what I want to sort of get to here is, do you think there is, and maybe we can talk about the history. Oh, hey, something that's just come up is that some of the viewers are wondering what kaupapa means. Rob, can you just give us a quick explanation of kaupapa?
Yeah, it's like purpose, I guess. Yeah, that would be the best kind of context. It's got a lot of meanings, but I think in the context of these discussion, is your kaupapa is your purpose.
Awesome.
And I have an additional suggestion too. Why? Because for us, Māori music or Indigenous music is mainstream for us, and it's also commercial. So I think another term to put on the table might be common music.
Hey, let's be honest. Sometimes the labels have been what holding us back, right? You know. So
yeah, man.
So let's as a group here, we'll resolve that this is, you know, all of the music is awesome, and we're all trying to do the best we can in our own different way. And but that is an interesting point, Cilla. Thank you, because that's what I'm trying to get to. Is that is there a place for these two things to coexist? I mean, we've had pioneers in New Zealand, Aotearoa, for bringing the reo into the commonplace, into the common consciousness, of music, and it's been a battle. And so, you know, we've had the Pātea Māori Club, we've had Moana Maniapoto, all of these people who've done a lot of pioneering work in our music landscape to try and get it more mainstream. Would you say that those today that's getting better, and perhaps that the music industry in general is starting to look towards Indigenous cultures to bring in. We talk about beacon of light to our own people, but are we becoming that beacon of light for Pākehā, for not the industry that is looking for a deeper meaning and a deeper kaupapa and purpose to what they're doing? Thoughts?
I think, I'm very much of the belief that we are who we are, regardless of what goes on around us in terms of popularity, in terms of an industry veneer. And I think that the beautiful thing about Māori music in particular is that that belief has risen in different areas of broadcasting and platforming for our people. So those pioneers that you speak of, they're not restricted or relegated just to the music industry. Throughout the broadcasting sector wide, we have amazing benefits and gains that we now enjoy because of those pioneers that you speak of. And as a result, we now have our own dedicated Māori television station and network. We have Te Reo and we have Māori TV. We also have 21 Indigenous radio stations throughout the country. And for the size of this country, that's massively impressive that we have 21 of those tribal iwi radio stations. And then, of course, we all have all our digital platforming. So we enjoy, and that's why I don't say it lightly, that I think that Māori music is mainstream for us. It's certainly for Rob and I and many of the artists that I manage, that's the truth. So it's very important to demystify or to push back at this myth that mainstream is only the common radio stations or the... I think the non-Indigenous radio stations.
Yeah, I think to give a greater context to that as well is that, like, I came, and many of the artists of my generation have come through for our international listeners and viewers. We've come through a strong kapa haka background, and kapa haka is Māori performing arts, and it's heavily music focused, heavily vocal focused, singing focused. All of those things. And so we came off what was termed as the golden age of kapa haka in the 90s and the early 2000s. But and talking about pioneers, the kapa haka movement here in Aotearoa is so powerful and has swept up the entire country. And for a younger generation of Māori listeners, Māori music absorbers, kapa haka has formed a massive part of their playlists. So Māori language music is the norm for many younger generation Māori listeners to music. So when we say Māori music is mainstream, it's because for the majority of the day, for a lot of our young people here in Aotearoa, Māori music from a kapa haka world, from recorded music world, actually takes up the majority of their day. So the whole landscape, because of the pioneers like Dalvanius, like Pātea Māori Club, like Moana and the Moa Hunters, like Te Mea, and like Te Wakahuia, like Wairere Māori Club, like Ngāti Pōneke, like Te Hokowhitu Atu, like Whangara Mai Tawhiti. And now, even secondary school kapa haka teams have these massive followings. It's because of all of those things, the collective might of our entire Māori music ecosystem that has created this brand new paddock that has a massive absorption rate for and download rate for Māori music. We're actually not creating enough to keep up with the demand, to service the demand. And so also to give context for our international listeners, if you Google search or YouTube search kapa haka, our singing is a lot like choir singing, full on power, unmiked kind of stuff. And and beautiful tunes, wicked content, wicked language elocution, execution, Māori poetry in its highest form. So I think in the now we can proudly stand on the shoulders of Māori television, on the shoulders of iwi radio, and on the shoulders of our kapahaka competitions, festivals all around the country, and say Māori music, if you choose it to be, can be your mainstream in a multi-stream universe.
Mm-hmm. Whoa, some revolutionary stuff in there, Mr. Ruha. That's what happens when you live on the coast, running a time winer with lots of time on your hands. Yes, amazing. So I really love this idea of the paddock and this new paddock where we have artists and actually, and I believe it to be true that right now what we are seeing is these two things starting to come together. The power of the audience currently residing in Aotearoa that has had a deep exposure to not just what we have termed as the mainstream music today. I mean, and again, we're looking at yourselves, we're looking at Stan Walker, we're looking at Alien Weaponry, we're looking at, all of these groups that are now going, hey, this is who we are, this is what we can do. And it has, there is something in this that you guys have missed. And so here it is, here's the paddock. And now you've got just released, I guess, which is all of, the top sort of artists, contemporary artists in New Zealand, and I'm starting to kind of make sure I don't pin myself into the usual words, but you've got really high profile acts, 660, Bikarunga, these are all people that have done traditionally well on radio and have been those types of recording artists, now releasing music into all of their old big tracks in that way, and the amazing work that the pioneers have done to kind of help make that a reality.
Sorry, Wiles. I was just going to say on that note, now that project, obviously, that as far as I know, just only because we did one waiata for that particular project where it was what the common artists, artists in the common space. in our Māori language and our Indigenous language, which is huge, right? I mean, that's just was like wow. But that idea came, from my understanding, from Hinewehi Mohi, who is also one of the absolute pioneers, right? And so it just goes to show the power of the idea, the power of someone to think something like that, and then say, actually, this could be a really wonderful project. Is I sing in our Indigenous language. Imagine if our top artists in that space, that commercial space, were to sing in our ancestral tongue as well, with the huge reach that they have. What a little ripple or a big ripple that might affect. So. Yeah, I just want to mihi to Hinewehi for that thought, because look how significant that has been. And now we see, 660 singing it at their concerts. Tiki will sing the waiata, and it's growing the confidence within each of those artists who potentially, when you've been caught in that world of the commercial world, you can feel quite isolated and quite disconnected, even more so from our culture, because you're just caught in that whole entire machine, that patriarchal machine, that does not belong to us and serve us as Indigenous people, and you end up actually becoming quite isolated. So I think it was a really beautiful gift for her to put that thought forward and to follow through with that, and we're seeing the fruit and feeling and experiencing the fruits of that, and it can only make us stronger, as a people.
No, thank you, Ninakaye. And also, I mean, just to help our viewers, our international viewers, with a bit of context, Hinewehi Mohi, who was involved with this particular project, was also the one that decided to sing our national anthem in Māori, and got a huge amount of stick and flack for it from non-Māori, and now it's actually part of to sing it in Māori is now part of the traditional way to do it.
Wasn't it Wairere? Was it 20 years ago? 21
Yeah, 20 years
ago.
ago. That's right. And to talk about pioneering, she decided she was going to do it, and she knew what was going to happen when she did it, and it all happened. But she held her ground, and here we are. And so, guys. So what I want to do. So yes, I think it's been really good. Sort of 40 minutes we've spent kind of discussing the landscape that we live in as Indigenous. The native Indigenous culture here in Aotearoa, and the challenges that we face, but also sort of how it all fits. So what I'd like to do is help some other Indigenous artists if they're thinking of coming to Aotearoa and see what it is that they're kind of walking into, and how they might be able to approach coming to Aotearoa, and putting something together, and maintaining their indigeneity and sort of where the space would be for them, how that might work. Is it in the challenges? The other thing, I also just want to mention there are a few questions, particularly you mentioned the iwi radio station, the iwi radio station network, and Māori television. So what we'll do is towards the end of this broadcast, we'll mention a couple of groups that could help with giving lists and that kind of thing, 3MDI, something that me and Ninakaye are involved with. But we'll add something at the end where if Indigenous groups or anyone that's watching here at the moment wanted to get in contact, we can tell you how to do that. Okay, so how am I going to come to Aotearoa? What am I likely to expect? Challenges wise, when coming here with my content. Why don't we start with what kind of, so Rob and Cilla, you're talking about there being this ecosphere, this other mainstream, where there is a wealth of audience that is engaged with Māori culture and Indigenous culture. Is that something that a band from Canada, a native band from Canada could connect with?
I think that's something a native band from Canada has connected with. Cool. Rob over the last maybe 3 years has enjoyed a very close and personal relationship with a tribe called Red. And Tama Waipara, who is also a Māori festival director, formerly working with the Auckland Arts Festival.
And an amazing artist himself.
Absolutely. And now the current director of the Tairāwhiti Arts Festival.
And I'm just real quick, I'm just hoping he might pop in somewhere in amongst this. So if we can get him on, that'll be choice. So yeah. Sorry.
Wow, the big guns. but yeah, so I mean, it's not a new thing to have Native American acts on our Aotearoa stages. I think, again, going back to kind of the precursor to that discussion would be understanding as an artist, as an Indigenous artist, from Turtle Island, what your purpose is here in Aotearoa. What is it exactly that you want to share, contribute to, gain as an artist yourself by coming to Aotearoa and sharing your music and your messages with our people. And I think from there, there will be more opportunities that come than challenges. And you will have you will have ultimate clarity over your kaupapa or your purpose here in Aotearoa, which will then help you to identify where, when, and how you present yourself and your artistic works to our people. And we're Indigenous people, we're resourceful people. There are 101 ways in which you can do that. But when you understand those fundamental drivers, it's far easier for you as an artist to then say, okay, I want to be able to deliver this message through my music into the common stream or the common places, or I have a very specific Indigenous message whereby this exchange is Indigenous to Indigenous. So I specifically want to inhabit the Indigenous spaces in Aotearoa, the Indigenous broadcasting network there. So I think that's very helpful in the outset in terms of what you're looking for.
Yeah, hard. And it's like, what is it about Aotearoa that, why here? Hey, why here? Because like, and I say that like,
in an inviting way.
Yeah, in an inviting way. Because the whole reason why we connected with a tribe called Red was, one, sonically the music hits you like a freight train, and Wairere, as we're talking about this whole kapa haka movement and the kapa haka scene being a huge influencer now in terms of funneling people into the recorded Māori music scene. There's a similar, we call it a wana feature, which is all of these intangible things that happens in this beautiful music creation things, and it hits you in a really spiritual way that you can't up here, you can't figure it out what it is, but you know what it is. And kapa haka is that. It hits you like a freight train, and it's so powerful and so overwhelming that up here, it takes a little while to figure out what's happening to you, but in here, it's fizzing. And then the earlier comment around your indigeneity is your superpower. For us as kapa haka people, when we heard a tribe called Red, there was an immediate reaction and an immediate relationship with the two art forms, kapa haka and stadium powwow. And it may have been the power of the drums, the power of the powwow drums that related particularly to the Māori ear with the takahi or with the stamping of our feet and what that sounds like upon our Earth Mother and upon our stages. It may have been that. It may have been the visuals that they were giving to us, pride in their Indigenous dress and their Indigenous regalia and their plumage and in their messaging. So it's like with what a tribe called Red was putting out to the world about who they were, it had an immediate reflection. It was like looking in the mirror. So it was obvious then that it was a good choice for them to come to Tāmaki Makaurau, play at the Auckland Art Festival. And then it was also obvious that we go and hire a van, drive up from Raukokore, pick them up, and then bring them to our marae for the week, sit down, write some music together, see where actually the nuts and bolts of things fit together musically, because we already knew we were on par when it comes to kaupapa or purposes or things that we wanted to champion. And then it was also perfect that they agreed to put a big, huge concert on at our local marae, so that all our old people, all our young people could come and see, what's this Tribe Called Red crew all about? And without them even saying anything, they felt the music first. So what Cilla was talking about earlier with knowing what it is that you're bringing here, what it is that you're about, what your sound is about, what your kaupapa or your purpose or your drivers are all about. That's all. That's all the legwork that you need to do for everything else to just go click, 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 click. And in terms of the audiences that are here, our Māori music audiences, we accept, not accept, that's such a rubbish kind of a term, but we embrace all kinds of genres. We're super eclectic people, and if it comes from here, then it's the right thing for us to pick up, We have a very powerful BS radar when it comes things that we want, that we know either comes from here or here or here. Hey. And when it comes from here, you can play anything, Dixie Chicks, or you can play, you know, heavy metal, or you can play your traditional music, and we will love it because it hits us in the right place. So I think that's what we're trying to get across.
And I think it's a very important thing, because like Rob said, if you, and it ties back into Hinewehi's kaupapa and the fact that now even the most popular artists in Aotearoa, New Zealand, are now looking over into the Māori music paddock and going, oh man, yeah, I'd really like to be a part of that project, singing in the Māori native language, because it's cool.
Yeah.
Because it's a cool and rising in popularity in our country. And you know why that is definitely the legwork that all our pioneers have done. But now what that's given permission to Māori artists, the permission that's given to Māori artists is a license to just do them, to just be who we are. And then all of a sudden there's a gravitational or magnetic pull from the common spaces into the Māori spaces, because they're looking over and going, wow, there's something in that that's really, really appealing to us and has broad and wide appeal in New Zealand society or Aotearoa society.
Yeah, because I think the other conversation is that I think what we have been fed that no one likes Indigenous music. I think that's a narrative that we've been fed. That's colonial fiction that we've been fed for so long now. And I guess for our international viewers who are thinking of coming here and bringing your music here to Aotearoa, is that's actually not the case. That's actually not the case anymore. That's also a rotting narrative that is fast becoming not even a narrative and not even on the table. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that audiences here in Aotearoa are fast opening up, because they have new narratives that they want to listen to, which is actually, if it's good music, it's good music, and I want to hear it. That's it.
It's interesting. So go ahead, Cilla. You finished the thought.
Just to round off my kōrero, where I was heading with that is, these Indigenous artists being very sure of themselves and sure of their identity and very confident within that. What that then, and I'm talking about a tribe called Red as well as Māori artists, what then happens is when you have artistry with that level of surety and confidence, the rest just becomes databases, right?
Yep.
Just databases for contacts, whether it be booking agents, whether it be festival promoters, whether it be radio station networks. Those are all just databases which are easy to access, which like 3MDI and other initiatives and organizations can definitely help with. But what happens is when that database or when that station clicks into you or connects with you as an artist, your job as an artist before that is to prepare everything else, so that when they connect with you, they understand exactly what it is they're connecting with. And, in terms of their audiences and the people that they serve, they will know whether that hits or will land with their own. So I think be very sure and confident in yourself. Do the internal work, do your artistic work, do your musical visioning. And if you do that, the rest is just databasing and finding the right people to connect you with their people.
Iti.
Exciting. Well, I mean, what you're essentially saying is that there's been a lot of work done here by Māori, which has created the space where any Indigenous culture could come here and actually find a market that they could engage with in a genuine and authentic way culturally. We've established ourselves within Aotearoa as multi-genre artists, and that we've that's hip hop. So if we're thinking about some of the the traditionally sort of the traditional genres that we've gravitated towards that haven't been traditionally that aren't traditional Māori sort of components in it, which would be reggae, hip hop. You know, but we've got a strong sort of show bands, and then country music, for example. So there's all those kind of things that have where Māori have tried to be, I guess, assimilate themselves into a Pākehā paradigm or a non-Māori paradigm, and now what that non-Māori space is finding is that there's room for them to be Māori within their genre. Yeah, and so like I say, we've got bands like Alien Weaponry, which are hardcore metal, who are taking their stuff to Germany completely and 100% into Reo Māori, you know, and so so that this space has been created. So now, if we can take Māori music out to the world in a heavy metal genre, then surely there's some other Indigenous cultures that can come to New Zealand and with traditional material or elements within their genre, which could work. So we're not just talking about connecting. You know, you talked about. Sorry, is it a Tribe Called Red? Yes,
yep.
That resonated with you musically and sonically, and but there are hip hop artists here that perhaps the same message and what you were talking about, Cilla, the same message, the same kaupapa and purpose is resonated with somebody in the same genre here, with a Māori artist, maybe not with a Māori artist, but has that same kaupapa, and that could be utilized in to collaborate with. It's this amazing story too about Tama bringing them over, and I want to talk about some of those practical elements so that the whānau understand the practical realities. And you are talking about, you know, knowing your space, and then you've got the practical parts of the databasing, that kind of thing. Database, I'm all about databases. That's me, techie. But Ninakaye, so I just want to come to you because, you know, this is your brother's been. He's very strong in collaboration. He sits in those genres. He's gone from dub, which, you know, which kind of is kind of come out of reggae, and he's kind of moved into that electronic space as a sound engineer. He's got a pretty strong drum and bass sort of identity as well. But you know, he's not just those things. He's got into more. He's very diverse in terms of the genres that he participates in. You know, how do you think, have you done any collaborations? Is there anything that along those lines that you feel that other Indigenous cultures from around the world could connect with and have that same purpose?
Have that same purpose of...
Yeah, like just in terms of collaborations and that type of thing, have you had a similar experience, I guess, with Rob and Cilla in terms of how those things have worked? Maybe more so just around, you know, how does Tiki go about trying to engage with international artists and people who he resonates with?
Well, it's exactly the same as what Cilla and Rob have said, and it's pretty much, it's all just a lot of it's natural evolution with a little bit of push in there as well, a bit of drive, you know, it's all that stuff. So Tiki pretty much will only sort of works with artists that, you know, his heart, same thing, he feels his heart's just like, whoa, he gets that whole effect from, and it's not that he'll only work with that, but that's just how it always seems to happen. He's just, you know, he is a very busy person. Does a lot of different things, and so he totally vibes on the opportunity to meet someone else like-minded or with a similar drive like that. And actually, Rob and Cilla are one of those. You know, when Rob approached Tiki to do Kāriri, and that was just like wow for Tiki. And so, and in terms of international artists, same thing. I think the collaboration thing, I mean, essentially it comes back to relationships for sure, and I think that's obviously a really big part of any release strategy is the relationships. first and foremost, like we were saying, relationship with yourself and your own identity and your authenticity around who you are and your ability to present that, and then of course of your huarahi, your journey, your pathway, and how you want to enter into Aotearoa if you have a contact, you know, and like for example us, anyone who's watching this has got any of us for now. And so that means something, you know, that is something. Oh, kia ora, I was watching the live feed and saw you on there and something you said resonated. Oh, boom, that's it. You know, where are you from? Who are you? Da, 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 da. It's as simple as that. I mean, we're so lucky to have the ability to connect like that through social media. And admittedly, a lot of our international connections have come through social media. And we really honor that. You know, for us, it's really important to us to be able to connect in this way, and relationships, strong, beautiful, loving relationships, have been formed through social media, with you know, for our family, and then and sometimes we haven't even met someone, but we've collaborated. So stuff like that can happen. So I think it's important to acknowledge that this is one of the ways that we now connect and relate to each other, and it's very, very important, and to utilize it, you know, to utilize this method, this means, because as Indigenous people, we speak the same heart language anyway. You know, we might not understand each other's ancestral language, but there is this universal heart language that we all understand. And so being able to speak that to each other through these means, we can connect in these deeper ways, and then, you know, things can develop and evolve from there. And so I think that's really it, is the relationships thing. And then if you were to come over here, because we often get that, oh, hey, we're thinking of coming over, you know, after lockdown. Oh, choice. Awesome. We'll be ready for you, kind of thing, you know. And so what I've really got out of this discussion myself is around the challenge for me, or not the challenge every day for me actually, is looking beyond the common, because that is the realm that my artist, my brother, and I tend to be more prominent in, and actually all those labels and all those things that we're talking about, kind of just letting them rot away, like Rob said. Coming up with it, and looking beyond it, actually just shifting it and going, okay, what we're in currently is such a beautiful time, because it's like a fresh page, you know, as tough as it is with COVID and everything, but it's a new blank page, and it's an opportunity to just actually forget a lot of that, that whole past way of thinking and operating that does not serve us, and now look to actually what does serve us. You know, connection to our environment serves us, connection to each other serves us, connection to ourselves, to our family, to our loved ones. And then I think if you step out with that, like Cilla and Rob have already said, then you can't go wrong. And when you come here, you're probably going to end up in a van, going to a mai, hopefully having some of the local delicacies from the beautiful East Coast Ocean, you know, all those kind of things. And
hey man, it's more than Justin Bieber would get if he came to this country, you know what I mean?
well,
You know, can you imagine Justin Bieber rolling up and then Rob and Cilla picking him up in the van and taking him down the coast? Get a feed of mussels and a feed of crayfish.
That's the thing.
That's the ultimate. So, you know, so you're gonna get treated better than that way. So
Correct.
And I'd like to pick up on those points too, and for our Indigenous artists in Canada, just a little bit of an insight in terms of you know, the practicalities coming here and some of the value sets in which they'd enter into. And Ninakaye touched on it in this last kōrero, and it's around relationship as king. So for us, that word is called whanaungatanga. And of all of our values, I would say arguably it's the most pervasive in our culture is whanaungatanga. Relationships are everything. So, in terms of those databases, which Wairere is king of, it's actually really important to find that right touch point, because how we work is almost like the forest floor, right? That's our ecosystem, our relationship ecosystem. One person is connected to a whole network of other peoples that can help advance kaupapa or purposes that are aligned with the people they're connected with. So I think that that's a very, very important thing for other Indigenous artists to understand when they're coming into our Indigenous world in Aotearoa, that whanaungatanga or relationship certainly is king. And the other equally most pervasive in duality, things come in twos. So the other thing would be manaakitanga, and that value is around essentially enhancing the mana of someone else. Okay, so the other thing I would think of if I was an Indigenous artist coming into Aotearoa is, what do I have to contribute to that land, to that people, to that narrative, to that story? What is it I bring that can enhance their well-being? Or what is it I bring that? And we see that pervasively in all our cultural practices. No one turns up empty-handed, whether it's they're there to sing a song, there to cook a bread, there to do something. They have a contribution that they're making. So I think for other Indigenous artists wanting to come into New Zealand, that those are two values that are really important to be aware of, and that I think in terms of the practicalities of coming here, if you factor that into your thinking, then you will be received in a very positive light.
So would you say that that's, if we're talking using the paddock analogy, that would be the cattle stop? Yeah, that's the manaakitanga, the whanaungatanga is the thing that if you ain't got the right feet, you're not going to get in, so you've got to and that's because this is a beautiful lush paddock filled with lovely green grass, and this is your way to really fully properly engage with that group. Amazing.
Yeah. And I think effectively engage and get the best out of all of those experiences. If you've got those things that Cilla just spoke about at the cattle stop, you will get the best out of your experience here, and the things that you're wanting to share through your music, through your own artistry. Will reach the furthest, I think, will fully attain, the best of its potential here, because those things have been checked off, I think.
Because I guess if we're working with a sort of a, oh man, these words are so weird, but if we're working in a traditional paradigm, a traditional music paradigm, usually that cattle stop are things like booking agents, promoters. Yeah, you got to know those people. You're saying come correct, come manaakitanga with whanaungatanga, have these things as your core, and it's and all within all of those things. Is there, to access this, is it the type of thing, because we're all whānau based, this is not, we're all self-reliant, we've been doing it on our own because traditionally booking agents and promoters haven't really engaged with the type of content we're talking about. Yeah, so this is an interesting idea. What do you think, Ninakaye? Is this something that you think is it, have you had to drive towards getting those types of things? So if an Indigenous artist was coming here, do you think that's looking for a traditional idea in terms of because a promoter, you think of Tama Waipara, he's a promoter, and so those fellas are starting to look over the fence. Not that Tama he's always been inside the paddock, don't get me wrong, but they're those other, sort of mainstream or traditional promoters might be now going, oh, actually, there's something over there that we haven't engaged with.
But no, I think they probably will, if they don't already. We're independent. independent, there's another one of those words, but we do things ourselves. So we are our own booking agent, our own label, our own publisher, etc., etc. And that's because those 10 years where Tiki was frontman for a band that was non-Indigenous, we learnt what it is to not be in control of your own, to have your own self-determination, I suppose, where someone else dictates to you how you should, how you should go about your music, basically. And so, and actually, that's just rubbish. Nobody else can tell you that. Only you can tell you that. So yeah, we've been fiercely independent, doing it our own way for the last 13 years, and I guess with anyone coming over here, you want to be the same, because we want to take care of what we have, our gifts, which are the gifts handed down to us from our ancestors, no matter what shape or form they come out in, be it heavy metal or whatever it is. But those are our gifts, and so we don't want to get here and then just sort of give it over to somebody who does not understand, respect, and honor what those gifts are. And so I know for our family, we're get pretty protective of Indigenous artists who come over here, because we want to take care of you, So if there was a promoter from the common paddock going, oh, I want that artist, then, or even if I hear about that in the industry, I'm the kind of busybody that will try to actually get in the middle, try to intervene and go, hey, what's going on here? Is that an Indigenous artist coming over? Is anyone looking after them? Do they have a relationship? Because who's going to take care of them when they get here? Because we have seen, and we know well, the culture that goes with the common music industry, and the ways that a lot of promoters operate. Okay, we're getting into it now. The way that a lot of promoters operate, a lot of booking agents, etc., again, does not serve us and our values, and does not honor and respect Native people in the way that we know how to honor and respect each other. And so, yeah, my alarm bells.
Do you think that that's something that's changing? Are there more promoters, booking agents, and things that are starting to, like I say, there's Tama is an idea of a promoter.
Oh, definitely. And that's normally what it is you can actually just more identify one promoter or the promoters that will take care. And so, of course, for me, if an Indigenous artist was coming here, then I would want to refer them to Tama, Emere, Brian and I, that kind of thing. The ones who are Indigenous anyway, who I know will take care of our family. Our family. But there are, we are starting to see it, but I think we need to, as Indigenous artists here on the ground, probably need to push a bit more. Those of us who are within that common space. And I think we're starting to do that because we're starting to get more involved in those discussions and events and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's hard work. The ultimate is to actually, again, look beyond and just do our own things. We anticipate there are going to be more Indigenous run festivals and events from here onwards. There needs to be, there has to be, there will be. Absolutely, and I'm sure Rob and Cilla, again, because what Rob and Cilla are saying with their mainstream, that is the world. And it's time for the rest of the common space to recognise that there is this entire beautiful, thriving ecosystem going on there, on the ground. And our kids are my kids are listening to kapa haka all day, every day. They're listening to Waiata Māori, and they're listening to TikTok. That's it. Kapa haka, Waiata Māori, and TikTok. That's actually their culture. And the commons industry is starting to has to come around to that reality, because it's a powerful force, man. It's a powerful force, with all our kids that are on the ground who have been learning our native tongue over the last 40 years or whatever. It's a really powerful force. But just invite our Indigenous family from overseas to come and be a part of that, take on everything that has been said in this session as our truth, as our absolute truth from our heart to you all, and invite you with open arms to come and be a part of it, and to and contribute to it, but also to receive from it. Yeah.
Well, speaking of what I guess the kids are doing today, my son just entered the room to play Wairere Iti or Fortnite, and so he's making noise over here. I keep telling them to be quiet. But yeah, you're right. There's a whole new culture and merging of cultures that's happening, and the types of things that our kids are doing that we, as old kaumata and queer, haven't can only having to catch up with now. So there's a lot of things happening there. No, there's a question that's come through, and I guess I know you rounded up Ninakaye, but it's just, and I think it's, I guess, just to summarize, which was the question here from, I think it's Mr. Perfect, and he's asking around whether or not it would be good to have a producer, manager, and promoter and to enter the space. I mean, we're talking about there are key people within the ecosphere that we think would honor the kaupapa that we're talking about, and how we think they be best treated and brought into the space, particularly as tangata whenua, as people of the land, for those who are wanting to know what that term is, but the ones that are here to recognize your manaakitanga and your whanaungatanga, but in terms of that engagement, so you worked with a tribe called Red. There's a lot of practical, logistical things that we need to do, right? And so I imagine at the end of this conversation, and whoever's watching us now, we're all going to get hammered with a bunch of emails and wanting to know stuff, which is all good. But there's going to be, as there is within our own ecosphere, certain levels of organization and practical and logistical capability, right? And so what is it that I guess artists and groups are going to need to come in next to those core values that you were talking about earlier, Cilla? But what are the practical things that you're going to need in order to kind of make things work?
Well,
Yeah.
There you go. Well, my short response will be teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. So get your right team for the dream that you have. And I think the majority of the points that we've spoken about through the session has been around the dream, or around the kaupapa, around the purpose. So if you're very clear about that, you will know who your team needs to be. So you will know whether or not you need a producer, or whether or not you need a manager, or whether or not you can just jump on the plane and come over here because you've made your own relationship with someone else, either in this forum or in another forum. So, teamwork makes the dream work, but you've got to know what the dream is first. And then that should determine what your team is. Go, dear.
Yeah.
Next.
It's another iteration of that conversation there. I think that it's a really, in my experience managing artists internationally in other Indigenous territories, there's a huge benefit that comes from understanding relationship is king. So by procuring a promoter or an agent or touring manager, someone within Aotearoa New Zealand who has relationships and networks that they can call on and won't put you in places where your music won't be valued or won't put you in positions where there's a conflict or a tension between your Indigenous values and what's going on the ground, I think would be hugely vital. In terms of the more artistic stuff, finding a New Zealand producer or a New Zealand artist to collaborate with, I think in our experience there have been huge benefits collaborating internationally with Indigenous artists. And it's never really started with desiring a result to share their audiences. It's really been a genuine love and appreciation for their artistry and their musicality and wanting to create because we're creators. And I think there is a plethora of amazing Māori producers here. Tiki Taane would be definitely in my top cream of the crop Māori producers.
Absolutely.
Rory Noble would be another one, and the list goes on. So if there are Indigenous artists out there that want to collaborate with Māori, I think that naturally leads, as it has done with a tribe called Red and Rob. Rob in 2021 will be releasing some tribe and Rob Ruha music here in Aotearoa. And in October this year, Tribe will be releasing some Rob Ruha tribe music as a part of their album. So I think that relationships are a very successful way of being able to enter into other Indigenous territories. And so having those people, and I mean, in terms of promoters, Emere Wano, who runs WOMAD, Tamawaipara, who runs Tairāwhiti Arts Festival. And the list goes on. Spores, another beautiful one. There are so many beautiful promoters who are Indigenous promoters here in Aotearoa that I feel would look after other Indigenous people the way that we would aspire to look after Indigenous to Indigenous relationships. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunity, and it's for you to know your artistry, for you to know your musical vision so that you can connect with those relationships that would empower you the best.
Boom. Amazing. Yeah, cool. And so I guess what I want to kind of get into now is, and you spoke, you kind of gave us a little bit of a list, and I want to kind of explore a little bit some of the resources that are available to maybe, so we can, I guess, work out a way to connect with other like-minded artists and maybe and professionals within the industry. I mean, we're working very hard right now in not just developing the artistic and the creative side, but also the industry side, about making sure that there are good managers here in New Zealand and that have Māori managers. And Ninakaye, we started a group about 8 years ago because there was this big push for that, and there was a clearly a lacking of Māori music managers to manage Māori artists, and also I guess similarly we're talking about artists who are working in the common or the mainstream music industry, who are Māori, who perhaps haven't really been able to be themselves within that organization, within that role, and I guess the converse to that right now, what's happening is that people are starting to get leaned on as in terms of cultural capability when that's not necessarily their role. So anyway, there's a lot of, we could have a whole entire other discussion about that, I'm sure. But so right now, what I'm saying is I think I actually lost my place on what I was going to ask there. What that question?
Asking about resource, bro. The resource.
Thank you, Ninakaye. Thank you. Always my rock in helping me figure out where I am. Resources, yes. So where can Indigenous artists go to see some stuff about us? And let's get into the techie databasey stuff. is there so let me ask this question. Is there a list somewhere of all the iwi radio stations? Anyone?
Yeah, you can go. I think it's irirangi, the irirangi.net, potentially. Is that right, Cilla and Rob? Yeah, www.irirangi, irirangi.net. That has a list of all the 21 stations that Cilla referred to before. Now, keep in mind that each of those, they're in different tribal territories and they operate in different ways. So you do need to approach them all individually. Well, that's how you used to. I think it's still like that, whānau? It's not cool, I'll just send one thing to one person and it'll go to everybody. They don't operate like that. So you do need to approach each of them separately. That would probably be that one. And then the other one, of course, which I'll speak to before Rob and Cilla suggest any, is 3MDI, which is our Facebook page. And that's really just like Wairere said, a support group. And we welcome anyone to join that. And that, you can look 3MDI or that's probably I'll just say that 3MDI on Facebook and join that group and that has, through that page, there's years of resource and things like that, more in the common space.
Yep, and there are, as we've just done a bit of a reboot with the page, and now there is a lot more resources coming in, things, lists of things. So, and now just so that everyone knows, I'm posting that into those who are currently in the webinar. This may get to the Facebook page, I'm not sure, but I have posted some of these links, including the one for the irirangi.net and the Facebook group into the comments of this, and I'm sure they will get over to the and be distributed in the right way. So that's all good. Yes, and so things like I guess what would be interesting, and actually as a resource for the 3MDI, would be to show a list of festivals within Aotearoa that are commonly booking Indigenous groups, or and I guess, for lack of a better term, world music type stuff, because that has been, again, another place that Indigenous music has been relegated to. But in the same token, it has also been a huge platform for Indigenous artists to get around internationally. So by no means an insult, but I do like where your heads are at right now, where our music is actually mainstream, and so that deserves the space on the main stage as much as anywhere. So so in terms of I did have some other ideas. Just if you are really, this isn't necessarily about you going off on your own to piece a tour together, maybe on your way to somewhere else, but really about looking at the market and looking at the space that you're entering into. These are some of the places where you might want to check out. And so this would be, if you're looking at at venues and you're wanting to put a tour together. Now, like I say, you plug into to the whānau, into this paddock that we've been talking to. There's a wealth of knowledge and resource in there. Some of the more traditional methods might be looking at some of our ticketing companies here, things like eventfinder.co.nz, I think it is now. I'll post that link up, which has a list of all of the venues in New Zealand that you can do by city. Again, what you get from that is you're looking at various ranges of venues and styles, things that other artists are doing there, so you can see where they're putting themselves. They've got contact information. Event Finder is one I always push a lot of artists to, because that's how they can see what's happening. Another really good place to perhaps look at looking for lists of Indigenous artists doing things. Our government agencies that do a lot of our funding, which is New Zealand On Air. They've and the types of things that are being funded. You can see in there, you might see artists, hip hop, in your genre that you might connect with, and then you can start to stalk them on the Facebook, on the TikTok, and actually to form those relationships. So that's New Zealand On Air. That's created.
Just jumping in quickly, New Zealand On Air also have a Spotify platform as well, and it'd be a good idea also to go through their Spotify playlists and identify what kind of genre is there. There's also a Te Reo Māori playlist that's there as well, and it's their most popular playlist that's currently on their Spotify link. So check that out as well.
So there's also a resource. What I think we'll do is we've just been given the 2 minutes left call. So what I'd like to do is I want to wrap up and thank you all for having such giving your time and giving such amazing insights into the land that we live in and the musical landscape. I'd like to thank you for making me completely insecure about the terminology I'm using whenever I'm talking about bringing these things together, and so, but that's good. This is what it's about. It's about kind of creating these discussions. I always love talking with you fellas and helping to expand my mind on how these concepts are brought together. Final thoughts from you, so just thinking about our whānau overseas and Turtle Island and sort of how we can encourage them to carry on the good fight and the type of support that we've got for them. I'll start with you, Ninakaye.
I pretty much said it before, but just to reiterate, you're welcome here to send aroha, love, big love out to you all at this time. And I think that's pretty much it. Just lots and lots of love. We love you all. And we look forward to a time where we can be together again. And yeah, just please be safe, be well, and take care of each other. And thank you for your time. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you guys someday. Ngā mihi.
Awesome, Ninakaye. Rob and Cilla.
Just to support the tuahine. Much love to everyone over there on Turtle Island, especially at this time. Encourage you to just go hard and use this opportunity to create your next masterpieces, and we'd love to hear what those hear and feel what those are in the future. And all the best to everyone who are artists out there, who are creatives out there. You are the light for our people who are in the darkness. That's been our tradition for eons, that we use music to heal, that we use music to lead people, and use music to bring out what's in here. So ki kaha kia koutou, ngā mihi aroha kia koutou.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And I'd just like to close in saying, you do you. Lead with your indigeneity, and may that be, may your Indigenous creativity and your Indigenous consciousness inform everything you put your hands to, and we can't wait to see what that looks like.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, the panelists. I want to thank you for coming in. I'd also like to thank everyone who's been leaving comments. I apologize if we didn't get to all of the questions. Such an in-depth conversation. I'd also like to thank the organizers, Jade and Alan, for contacting us and letting us be part of this process. We will be doing we're doing interviews and other segments within the entire festival, so keep an eye out for those. But until then, thank you all, and we will see you again soon. Ka kite!
Ka kite!